What does it mean to be transgender? Honestly, I don't know. I have a diagnosis of gender identity disorder. When I was very young, little, I remember wishing that I was a girl. I had no frame of reference. Like, it was never presented to me as an option. Like, no one ever said, well, maybe you were born in the wrong body. If you want to, you could be a girl. No one ever said anything like that. But being labeled gay was just about the worst thing that could happen to you. My name is Jessica. I was born in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, in 1980. I experienced, my mother and father struggled with alcoholism and violence. Honestly, I think maybe they did the best they could because I spent a lot of years processing that. But I ended up living with my grandmother. And I was a really sweet, scared kid. I remember being fascinated by my sister's room. The smell of it, the perfumes, her clothes. I always felt like I was doing something wrong when I was in my sister's room. I want to make this story as accurate as possible. I uploaded it yesterday, but then when I woke up today, I realized that I might have had some of the details wrong, or maybe I was overly critical on certain groups that maybe I shouldn't have. So I don't have any animosity towards anybody. I don't really blame anybody for anything that happened. For example, there was a lot of homophobia and internalized homophobia, pretty much with everybody I knew. Although I don't consider any of those people to be bad people. I don't know where it comes from. I don't even know where I first experienced it. All I know is that at a very young age, I remember being terrified that anybody would think that I was gay. And I also did not have any frame of reference for being transgender. That did not exist in my world. So people say, well, how come you didn't know you're transgender? Or, what are you talking about? Like, there was one transgender woman I ever seen, I think, on a show that my grandmother watched called Matlock. I'm pretty sure she was a famous black transgender woman. Besides that, you would see, they called them transvestites, were in movies like Psycho and Silence of the Lambs. But, like, there was no positive depictions of biological males dressing up as women. Now, I understand now that transgender people have existed for hundreds, if not thousands of years. It's well documented in all kinds of cultures throughout history in the world. So this is not anything new. We have the largest population of humans ever. So, of course, the percentage of people who are openly transitioning is, very high, although it's still very small compared to the broader population. Okay. So my early experiences being attracted or being drawn towards femininity, I don't have a lot. I wanted to be a woman, or wanted to be a female Halloween, like a witch. I wanted to be a witch for Halloween, but a girl witch. And my grandmother bought me the costume, and I put it on, and then I threw it away because I was too scared to wear it. I didn't want anyone to. I thought there was something wrong about dressing like a girl. A similar thing happened when I asked my grandmother to buy me a bunch of dolls. I just told her I wanted these dolls, and she bought me like 10 dolls, girl dolls. And I played with them. or I started to play with them, and then I threw them all away. Same thing. I was just scared. I didn't want anyone to think that I wanted to be a girl, right? So I'm like 8 or 9. I want to play with girl stuff, and I want to look pretty, but I was too scared that anyone would ever think so. And I want to say that there was comments from people who are close in my family, but I don't know if it's true, because sometimes when I remember things, I don't know if they're exactly accurate or if there's some kind of flaw in my memory, because psychologically speaking, we remember things and then we change them every time we remember things. Or at least that's what I heard in class, right? So I did gravitate towards the girls. The prettier girls were my friends. Not all, they were pretty much all pretty, but I don't know if that was the defining reason why we were friends. There were girls in the neighborhood. So I was hanging out with the girls, and they were pretty nice to me for the most part. Not always, but that's another thing too, is like, kids are kids, and kids can be cruel, right? But I remember we were walking through my neighborhood one time, and we walked past this house, and they said, that's where the boys live. And there was this house that had kids, full of kids, probably ranging from, I was probably 12 or 13, and these kids were like 15 to 25. Some of them were adults. But like, there was something about it, like they were smoking cigarettes, smoking weed, and there was all this excitement. And there was girls there too. The kids were like living there. It was like, I don't know, like something out of the Lost Boys or something. I don't know. It was, kids were literally falling out of the house. And so I started showing up there, and I remember being so I got made fun of. I had glasses, and I didn't know how to dress and things like that. But I eventually caught on. I learned how to fit in, and I became one of the boys. And because I was small and very petite, I tried to compensate by being very aggressive, right? Trying to prove a point. And this happened for a long time. And, I dated women. I dated girls. I always had girlfriends. I actually lost my virginity. Probably I was one of the first to lose my virginity. But I remember laying in bed next to some of the more aggressive boys and wishing that they would kiss me. I wanted to be kissed like a girl. Like, I wanted a male to kiss me and make me feel like a girl. So I don't know if that is a common feeling for people who end up transitioning, right? But that thought has been with me for so long. I started sneaking around. Like, I would hang out with my friends in the daytime, and then I started sneaking around. First, I would call chat lines, and I would try to meet guys on chat lines. And I'm blurry about some of the ages here. I'm sure there was some points where I was underage. Actually, after making the first podcast that I took down, I posted it for one night, and then I took it down because I was unsure about some of these details. Maybe it's actually talking is helping me to process it. I'm not sure. But I don't want to say things that aren't true. And actually, if anybody heard that, I'm sure they're not going to listen to that one than this one, but I genuinely feel sorry if I said something that was wrong. But so I started sneaking around, and eventually I got my hands on a fake ID. But I think I was 17 or 18 when this happened. I don't know. But so I ended up sneaking into lots of gay bars and gay clubs and things like that. And although you're supposed to be 21, I think I was probably 18. And something happened to me when I was in these places where I became a woman. Like, the way I talked, the way I walked, and even sat at a bar stool, all these things, like, it just became so natural to me to become as feminine as possible. And I remember I loved the attention that I would get from the men. Like, the way that they would desire me or want me, it was like intoxicating. And I was also drinking and sometimes doing other things. And I would put myself in these terrible positions. And I want to say that I was taken advantage of. I don't know if that's true, because at the time I thought I wanted it. Although a lot of times, there was so many times. There was situations where I know that I was hesitant, but I was so drunk and stuff, I just gave in anyways, And this happened for years. It wasn't like a small thing, right? So I was hooking up with girls in the daytime, and then sometimes at nighttime I was sneaking around with older men. And, I'm lucky that I'm still healthy, but it's obvious how risky this behavior is. And anyways, I still had never really heard of transgender. And in all these gay bars and gay clubs, I don't ever remember seeing a trans woman. The only time I seen a trans woman was, on pornography. And at this time, the internet wasn't even around. So I would go to the video store and I would buy like a video that had transsexuals in it. And I would watch it. And then I would get so scared I would throw out the video because I didn't want anyone to find these videos. I had to watch them in a VCR, right? And this went on for a long time. When the internet came out and you could just find access to these videos, I watched them all the time, right? Like, that was like the only sort of adult entertainment that I watched. It took me a long time to figure out that. So I did this with towards trans women, but also towards regular women. Like, there's this thing that I confuse wanting to be with a woman and wanting to be a woman. And again, I don't know if this is like behavior that's common to people who want to transition, but for years and years and years, I was fascinated by femininity. And the only way I could get close to femininity was by dating a woman, right? So, like, I would touch their hair and their skin, and a lot of times they would like it because, I felt like I loved them, and I was acting like I loved them. But I believe I was confusing being in love with women and wanting to be a woman. The same thing is, like, I was lusting for transsexuals when I wanted to be a transsexual. And at a certain point, like, it's like when you're watching a adult movie, there's two actors. There's the masculine male, and then there's the transsexual woman. Like, you associate yourself with the male, but there's a certain point when you realize, no, I'm not trying to be the male. I'm trying to be the woman. And when I realized that, it really changed everything for me. So anyways, when I was in my 20s, I sobered up. I quit drinking and doing drugs. And I went to school. And my best friend was this girl named, well, I'm not going to tell you her name, but she was a lesbian. She was gay. And she looked at me one day and she said, you're transgender. And I was like, no, what are you talking about? But I in some level, I knew it was true. And it really, there was already a seed planted, but it just started to bloom then. I guess that's the right way to put it. Where it got the thoughts in my brain that, no, you are trans. And I thought that I was too ugly. I was too old. I'm 5'2". I'm weigh 135 pounds. I'm like 27 or 28, and I think that I can't transition. That's internalized homophobia right there, because I was in a perfect position to transition, and I have a lot of regret that I didn't do it in my 20s. Before I was that age, I was struggling with alcohol and substance abuse and all these things, so I give myself a pass for that. But once I was older and realized that no, I could have done it then. Now, see, I have children, so I wouldn't trade my children for transitioning when I was younger. But, in a perfect world where I could have made everything happen, who knows? But anyways, life is life. We can't change it. But I knew that I wanted to transition, and I didn't think I could. So, about a year, maybe later, I went out. I was living in a dorm, or not a dorm, but like an off-campus housing in Miami. And I bought a bunch of women's clothes and makeup and things like that, and a wig. And I put it all on, and I looked in the mirror, and I thought that I looked like a lunatic. I did not know how to dress and do makeup, and it was hastily done, and it traumatized me. And this is something that happens to people who want to transition. They run out and they buy a bunch of makeup and clothes, and they put it on, and they look in the mirror, and it scares the shit out of them because they don't look good, right? And they're like, oh my God, I can never do that again. So I threw everything out again. I've done this like many times by this point, bought things or received things and then tried it out one time and threw it away because I was scared, because I still was so scared that anybody. Now at this point, I didn't even really hang out with anybody I grew up with, and my family, they're kind of accepting. They're not the most homophobic people or anything like that, so there was really no reason why I couldn't have came out and transitioned. But I figured I'm not suicidal or anything like that, so I can just live my life. I can just be a male. Then I was already following a lot of prominent influencers that were trans, because now they really were starting to pop up, and you started seeing trans women in public that were not sex workers, because unfortunately the majority of trans women up until recently could only make a living doing sex work, and that's a whole another topic, and it's terrible, but it's just the way it is. But now we live in a world where you can be transgender, and you might experience some backlash, cultural backlash, but you don't have to be a sex worker. And now I started getting jealous. I started thinking, oh my, I could have done this. Why didn't I do this? And then people are popping up on YouTube, and, they experience hate, but they also experience a lot of love and attention. And I was like, I've just been a coward. I haven't lived my life. So I actually, I don't experience doubt that I'm transgender. I experience regret that I didn't transition early enough, right? And also, I don't blame myself for being young and not transitioning, like very young, because I had no frame of reference. And I don't know when is the appropriate time to tell people about the possibility of being trans, right? I don't know the answer to that question, and I know that society right now is struggling with that. We can't even figure out where trans people are supposed to use the bathroom, let alone when to introduce, I don't know, into somebody's psychology that they could possibly be transgender. I'm hoping that we figure these things out. But I forgot where I was. So anyways, I was in college, and I actually relapsed. I went back out for a while. I got married and had another kid at this point. So now I've had 2 marriages and 2 kids. And both failed, obviously. I mean, I used to blame my girlfriends and my wives for our relationships failing. And I mean, I'm sure that they had some part in it, but I mean, I wasn't being honest with myself or the world. So how could anybody have a relationship with me like that? That said, in 2019, I came back. I sobered up again. And this time, I was much more confident with who I was sexually and, my orientation, my sexuality, and my gender. I mean, I had a pretty good idea of what was going on at this point, but I still wasn't quite there to the point where I could transition. But I started learning everything about transitioning. I had lots of people I followed now. I knew how to research and do things like that, and I didn't realize it, but I was preparing myself, right? I was working on myself, processing my traumas of the past, getting to know who I am, building confidence, and also studying the different aspects of what you would have to go through to transition. And then about a year ago, I was driving in my truck, and the voice in my head said, there's no reason you can't do this, and I started to realize that I have maybe, if I'm lucky, half my life left, and I want to live it as a woman, right? I want to grow old as a woman. And so I changed my exercise routine. That was one thing. I made a mistake, and I worked out my arms and my chest for too many years. Now I don't ever do that. I only work out my legs and my butt, and I do a lot of cardio. I saw a doctor in West Palm Beach that's very renowned, and she took one look at me and knew I was transgendered. And so I'm on hormone therapy, HRT. I have a long ways to go, but I'm very happy now. It's amazing. Like, so you realize that you are living with dysphoria, especially once you start to treat it. Like, the way I feel now, and I wasn't a worst case scenario. Like, I probably could have lived my life as male. I just wouldn't have been very happy. But I wasn't to the extreme as some people. But when you transition, or you start to transition, the happiness and euphoria that you experience on a day-to-day basis, just doing things like mundane things, like going grocery shopping or driving or anything, it's like your whole life is different. And then you understand that, wow, I could have felt like this is how I was supposed to feel. But it's really, I don't think anybody who hasn't gone through a transition or is going through a transition could ever understand it. And we're such a small segment of the population. And there's the main issue that I experience with other people is that nobody really knows what transgender is. And like I stated at the beginning of this video, I mean, some people will say that you have to have gender dysphoria. I believe that I do. Some people think that you have to be a transsexual. The medical definition is somebody who is taking hormones and may have surgeries. And some people think that you don't have to do any of those things, that you just have to want to live as the opposite gender, right? And by definition, if somebody is living as the opposite gender, whether it's just through changing their aesthetic or through medical transition or socially transitioning, I mean, by definition, that would make them transgender, I think. I mean, there's such a controversy about who is and who isn't transgender. Well, like, are they transitioning or are they living as a woman? I mean, to me, that is kind of the only criteria that should really matter. I mean, how do we know what's going on in somebody's mind or spirit or soul? That's crazy. But we live in a world where, humans are just judgmental and in general, I guess, But I know that I'm doing this for me. Like, I wear makeup because I love it. I, dress the way I dress because I love it. I'm taking hormones and moving towards, a more feminine appearance because it makes me happy. So the strangest thing is when you look in the mirror and you think that you look beautiful. I think I look so beautiful. I'm so happy with the way that I look. And then other people, they can't see it, right? Like, they don't know. Or maybe there's something inside of them that doesn't allow them to see how pretty you are or I am. But it's like nothing I can do about that. I'm going to continue to live my life. And I hope that I will pass one day, but maybe I won't. And I've accepted that. I've accepted that I might not actually fully pass. But I'm going to live the rest of my life as a woman. And I'm going to transition where I am. Sometimes I feel like it's better to move away and just start over somewhere else. But no, I have to do it here. I should have done it a long time ago. Like, I might be the only trans person people experience, and all their misconceptions about what trans people are, because there's so many stereotypes. And some of it is, look at social media and the news. You always turn it up and they find the most extreme case of somebody. I don't blame people for the way they feel. I also don't blame, a lot of trans people or LGBTQ people, they've gone through a lot of trauma. So if you catch them at their most embarrassing point, or when they're having a bad day or something, and then that's what you plaster all over the internet, that's terrible. It works both ways. It happens there could be somebody who is very kind and a good person, and they grew up in a certain environment, and then they have a bad day and they say something terrible, and then that's the clip that circulates, right? So I try to tolerate people who are intolerant. I try to forgive people and understand that, if we see somebody at their worst, it doesn't mean they're a terrible person. They might be a good person that just has bad ideas. And, I hate to say this, but if you're part of a certain belief system, I understand that my existence is, fundamentally in opposition to what they believe. That sucks, but it's incompatible. There are certain belief systems that if you're part of that, my existence is incompatible with their belief system. It sucks. It's what? They might be able to tolerate me being alive, but they think that I'm doomed or that I'm very sick or that I'm going to a terrible place in the afterlife, right? But that's a whole different thing. My point is that I'm happy and I'm not changing and I'm not going anywhere. This is real. Trans people exist. I'm one of them. This is happening. And that's all I have to say about that. I love you. Bye.